It was time to lay siege to Lawton, and exploit its offerings provided for the thousands of military it hosted. Gary, and 3 of the SEM-C2 class components depositing themselves at the 1/2 block long bus terminal, at 2nd and C Avenue. The 9-square block expanse from 1st to 4th, and C to E, flourished with military traffic, but the Broadway of cash was centered on either side of the Lawton Cafe on 3rd Street. A 12 o'clock closing curfew presided over a multitude of flourishing compacted taverns, finding the 3-2 beer pavilion landscape, interspersed with pawn shops and sporadic tattoo endowments. Tobin, White, Martin, and Wilson laying claim to Bill's Alley Club, but unbeknownst to 3 of the group, there was one among them that had sampled, but never had any desired to consume a bottle of beer, or a beverage containing alcohol, but that was about to change. Oklahoma having just passed a law legalizing the sale of packaged liquor in April, the state having never ratified the 21st Amendment ending prohibition, but allowing the sale of what the state considered a non-alcohol beverage, 3.2 beer. Gary appraisal of Bill's Alley Club was, as its name implied, in an alley off 3rd Street, with Bill, a smiling gray-haired proprietor, providing free pretzels, and on occasion, donating a round of beer. With Tobin and Martin shouldering from New York City, and White from Pennsylvania, Wilson was surprised their beer of choice wasn't an Eastern brew as expected, but one that hailed from bordering Texas, a brew new to the fore, Lone Star. With the monetary stocking of the jukebox, the constant refrains of Marty Robbins's El Paso and Johnny and the Hurricanes' Red River Rock echoing, the 4 aspiring to amalgamate into the surroundings. Once back on base, it was soon discovered that with an ever-increasing amount of classroom study, the brevity of Lawton was acknowledged, but to limited anomalies. Failure in SEM-C2 was unacceptable. The consequence was a transfer to AIT, Advanced Infantry Training Unit, or USFAC, better known as the Field Artillery, for what was known as your Second 8. With the essential electrical skills accomplished, an assignment of drafting a schematic for an operational piece of electrical equipment of choice, with assigned values for each component of the apparatus was required. The class's volition was limited to relatively simple devices, encompassing minor circuitry, all save one. Gary recalling an acquisition from his past, his first dynamic audio amplifier, from a Wurlitzer jukebox, a super heterodyne, with 6L6 pentode push-pull power tubes. Having proclaimed this challenge to the warrant officer instructor, the irrefutable test wasn't his ability, but affirmation of resolve, and soon discovering a capacious number of hours needed to complete the task. With his new discerning knowledge, he was successful at his endeavor, somewhat expecting a commendatory comment from the instructor, but such as it was, the only person his accomplishment impressed was himself. The lady laid prone. Communication conduits containing numerous leads were prescribed, addressing her sleek and slender anatomy, enabling conversations to inquire and be audited. The purpose was to ensure regulatory employment, not to concede impairment, or to hinder her assigned duty. Assuring her application, and confirming the knowledge of position, accepting her logistical assignment, relative to an assured ambition. Recognition of disposition are issued, and a confirmation communicated for transfer. Her deployment is received and ready to assimilate. The 2 soldiers occupying the missile test van adjoining the cabled 45-foot nuclear-capable missile, confirmed that it was ready for erection and certified go for launch. Martin and Wilson receiving an admission of approbation from the warrant officer monitoring the two. The officer having observed the discovery and correction of his previous installed defective components. Al, Martin and Gary stepping out of the test van housed in the hangar-sized building with the other test stations and accompanying missiles, the two being the first to finish this troubleshooting exercise. When balanced together, the two were exemplary at troubleshooting and diagnosing the instructor-placed missile component difficulties, and remedying the problem. Martin, noticing that there were no instructors present on the test van line, the warrant officer instructor for their exercise having apparently stepped inside the adjacent van occupied by Tobin and White. Al up to his antics again, without hesitation, walking over to Tobin's and White's missile, glancing to make sure he wasn't observed, reached down disconnecting a cable. Introducing a non-instructor applied troubleshooting problem. Curiosity was sustained when the two warrant officers exited the van, and began researching the missile's additional problem. The instructor retaining a perplexed expression, and was overheard to acknowledge this was not a troubleshooting problem that he administered. Conferring with the other warrant officer, two commenced to diagnose the cause and location of the trouble. The problem was resolved. Al and Gary thinking they might be suspect for the unexpected difficulty, but fortunately not this time. Gary concluding, reason precludes opportunity if not deduced. Al Martin acquiring a new source of transportation, a well-worn 49 Ford. The New Yorker extending an invitation for anyone interested to join him in exploring the Wichita Mountain Wildlife Refuge and Mount Scott, just north and west of the military base. The mountain reputed to be the second highest in Oklahoma, reaching an elevation of 2,464 feet. Mount Pinchot, located several miles west, being 12 feet higher. Dombrowski, White and Wilson, deciding to join him in exploring this scenic Oklahoma domain. The foursome, motoring up the 3-mile circular road to the summit of Mount Scott, observing an impressive view of Lake Lawton and the never-ending flatland horizon of southwest Oklahoma. Continuing on their venture, the highway signs on the Kashmir's Road, marking the entrance to the wildlife refuge, and signs posted, off-road vehicle travel prohibited. The soldiers discovering a small herd of buffalo grazing off the highway, Al desiring a closer look, driving across the open field. The buffalo not giving a second thought about the visitors until they were within 20 yards, the herd deciding to move away from the intruders. The Ford continued, the herd moving on, except one big buffalo. He apparently decided to stand his ground, turning towards the oncoming vehicle, pawing the ground like a bull in a ring. Al stopping the car, the buffalo lowering its head and began a charge toward them. A wide-eyed Martin putting the car in reverse, and backing away as fast as he could, the buffalo halting, giving them a look of superiority, before joining the grazing herd. The evening approaching, Gary discovering, this so-called flat prairie landscape of Oklahoma, also retained another little talked about venue. A majestic vista. Sunrise and sunsets, a subtle reminder. What we see, is what we look for.